The Psychology of Life. Health and Wellness Show. With behavioral expert Dr. Scott Anderson.
So that was kind of the understanding is, listen, when you're giving that self-inventory, go back to the beginnings. You know where they are. You know it's mom, you know it's dad, you know it's childhood and so on. Look around over there. Start lifting up boards and uncovering the snakes and the rats and all the garbage underneath there and poke around. You'll find exactly what you're looking for. I know why I did that. I know why I'm doing that. That's the stuff that you got to talk about. That's the stuff that you have to emotionally relive because you're stagnant. You've become fixated on that. If my dad leaves my mom and abandons me as a boy, and I become traumatized by that, do I have the words and the capacity to express my inner emotions and deal with the family dynamics and have a real important talk with my dad about that, my mom, and deal with that at that level when I'm 8 years old?
No.
Absolutely not. So what do? I internalize that. I bury it. I stick it down deep. Are you okay? Yep, I'm fine. I'm fine. Am I fine? Can you bury that type of poison, that type of disappointment, that type of suffering and pain and hurt and resentment and anger, and you're going to bury that and just pretend it's not there? What's going to happen to that stuff? That's going to grow and fester, and it's going to start to ooze out. Think of it like garbage, okay? I made fish yesterday, and I cleaned the package and stuff, and I did all that, cooked it all up, and I just threw the package in there because I was like, it's clean. I mean, there's no fish in there or anything, but it had some residue, and I threw it in garbage thinking, it's fine. It's fine. Woke up this morning, I was like, what is that? Nah. Nothing, can't be the fish, you know what I mean? Because I just put it in there last night. So I go about my day and all this other stuff. I come home, it was warm in the house. Open that door and whoo, got a good whiff. And guess what? It smelled like fish. I opened up the garbage and holy crap, that stuff hit me like a brick. All within 24 hours, I was like, holy crap, So what did I have to do? I took out the garbage. I could have, and a lot of people do this. They spray it with something. They put some other crap. I don't want to waste the garbage. I'm going to put it in more and stuff and that stays in there for 2 days. Eventually, if you keep that garbage in there long enough, what's going to happen? It's going to be where you can't cover it up anymore. Bugs are going to start coming. All kinds of stuff is going to happen. It's going to stink really bad. There's nothing you could do until you're forced. Does that make sense? The purpose of telling you that is when you bury that stuff as a kid, it's like putting fish in the garbage can and pretending it's not there. And you get away with it for a few days, but eventually it's going to get to the point where it's overwhelming and you'll have no choice because it's going to start to affect you. Does that make sense? So, how are you going to fix this? Well, how am I going to get to that 8-year-old? How am I going to allow him to understand it's not his fault that the dysfunction of his mother and father, who he looks up to as gods, they were unstable to begin with. They were dysfunctional. It's their fault. It has nothing to do with him. Does he think that, though? He thinks he's at fault. He thinks he's to blame. He's thinking, well, maybe they're dysfunctional. Maybe they're leaving each other because of something I did. Because that's what kids do. Why would my dad abandon me unless I'm bad, right? What's one of the first things kids learn? What's bad and what's good. What do we do with bad stuff? We remove it and get rid of it, or we throw it away, right? Mom says, that's bad, that's no good. She throws it in garbage, right? Or she moves it outside, or she takes it away. Kids learn that right away. That's one of the first things you learn in your developmental milestones. So when your mother and father abandon you and go away or remove you, what do you think? You're the garbage. Why else would they remove you? Why else would they get away from you? unless you were bad. So kids internalize that. And an 8-year-old can't say, Dad, what's going on here? Can you explain to me what's that? Oh, well, son, sometimes moms and dads don't work. I don't ever remember anybody telling me that conversation. I just heard silence and things that, were bad, and we don't talk about that, and everything gets shoved under. Or you have a school counselor plays with little toys and stuff, and I was like, what the hell? Why am I watching a film strip? What does this have to do with not seeing my dad anymore, or not being able to eat, and seeing domestic violence? What does that have to do with that? The cartoon didn't help me any. If someone would have been honest with me and talked to me, or forced my dad or my mom to sit down and actually be honest with me and take responsibility for their dysfunction and explain it to me, and then say, hey, we're going to do something about it, that would have cured me. That would have fixed me. That would have allowed me to move forward. But nobody did that. Nobody did that. I understand why. So I don't have a time machine to go back there and force my father or my mother to do those things. So what did I do? Well, I just buried it. Now, when you bury all that toxic energy, how do you feel as a kid? When you go home and chaos is all around, and there's a lot of anger and frustration and screaming and yelling and crying and depression, and the whole atmosphere is just tense. You think a kid, an 8-year-old, goes in there and goes, oh, what a relaxing environment. You know what? I feel like doing homework and being able to just relax and enjoy my environment, which is my safety and security, my peace of mind. Or am I going to be all wired up and filled with energy and anxiety because my environment is? Yeah, it's going to be that one. Am I going to have the cognitive and emotional capacity to say, Mom, God, I've noticed the last week and a half after the divorce, I'm really feeling anxious. I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm having nightmares. I think it has something to do with this divorce and all the chaos going around here. And I'm wondering if we could spend a little more time together, and maybe we can sit down and do this and that. How many 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds are saying that to their parents? None. I can't even get adults to do that in therapy. So what does that kid do? Bottles it up. And kids that have lots of energy, what do they do with it? Do they talk about it? No, they don't have the capacity to talk. So they play. They play aggressively. That's all a kid does, is play. That's how they express themselves. They interact with others through play. Maybe a long time ago for some of you, but I remember. What was your whole life based upon from age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? What were you doing? Play. That's it. That's all you did, was interact and play. Because that's how you express. That's how you live. That's how you talk. That's your world. When kids have lots of energy and they are hyperactive and they have so much stuff on their mind that they're inattentive and they're unable to sit still, and they lack the ability to have attention to things because they're so fidgety and filled with energy and cognitively distracted, are they going to function well in school? A very structured, regimented environment? If a kid has attention deficits and hyperactivity and is easily distractible, do they do well in school?
Maybe.
No, absolutely not. 0 times will they ever do well, because that takes away with it. If I told you that you could be dying, your test results came back, and that you may have a horrible cancer that's going to eat you away from the inside out, and you may only have 24 hours to live, and then I send you to work the next day, you really tell me that you're going to perform better for some reason? The answer is no. You're not even going to be able to work. You're going to be so distraught, so upset, so distracted, so inability to focus and pay attention, and you're going to be hyperactive from all the anxiety. You're going to fail miserably at work.
Unless you're channeling it, though, and making that your coping mechanism?
Yeah, and if that were to happen, you wouldn't have had the anxiety in the first place if you had those coping skills.
Okay.
Yeah, because 8-year-olds don't have the ability to focus and channel that and say, well, I'm going to turn this into a sport, or I'm going to do this. They just feel horrible, and they have no clue. And you know who they're looking for to show them what to do?
Mommy and Daddy.
Yeah. And if one's missing and the other one is hysterical and using drugs or alcohol or sleeping all day or taking pills for depression and not being able to deal with life and being irritable and frustrated and screaming and yelling over the phone, talking bad about the person who's your father, that's not good modeling, is it? So that's the reality. It would be ideal if that could happen, but that's not reality. And reality is, so that kid is going to have to bury all this stuff and have anxiety and have attention deficit and hyperactivity. He's going to perform well in school. Do other kids like when kids have difficulty performing in school and are socially awkward and withdrawn? No, those are victims now. And other kids predate on that. They go right after them and make fun of them and bully them and put them down. Is that going to help that kid's already struggling self-esteem and self-worth and stability? No. Do you see where this pattern is going? So this kid's carrying around a feeling of inadequacy, low self-esteem, tons of energy, lots of resentment, anger, and frustration, and he has no way to express it. Oof. Is that a recipe for something really bad that's going to happen? Yeah. If I took a whole bunch of dynamite and then covered it in gas and shook it up and then put a little wick out and said, here's a lighter, I'll be right back. What's going to happen if you light that lighter? Boom. And that's what happens. These kids get to high school and they're exposed for the first time to something that's going to alter their state of mind. Let's say like alcohol or weed or drugs in some form or behaviors. And that's going to condition them to use this new tool to get away from that horrible feeling that they have. Is that going to be easily conditioned into a habituation and possibly abuse? Yeah, almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed. And when you open that up and you let all that garbage out when you're drunk or when you're high, oof, bad behaviors are going to leak out of there. Fighting and resentment and anger and gang stuff and doing very impulsive things and not thinking about stuff and stealing and oh man, it comes with the territory, doesn't it? If I lack impulse control and I don't make good decisions and I'm filled with anxiety, stress, anger, rage, and frustration, aren't I going to do bad stuff? Yeah, that doesn't mean I'm bad. It means that I'm wired to be bad in those behaviors. But if I do that bad stuff long enough, what do I become? Bad. You become what you do. Now, is that fair to that 8, 9-year-old, 10-year-old? Did they deserve this? No. Did they ask to be born into this dysfunction and to have to react this way? No. Now, it would be easy to say, well, he's a victim. He's a victim. Because it's not his fault, is it? Whose fault is it, by the way, that he's in this situation? 13, 14 years old, filled with frustration, anger, resentment, oppositional defiance.
Parents' fault.
Is it their fault?
Yes,
Hell no.
Is it their fault?
that age.
Is it? Well, I mean, listen, this is a serious question and we got to answer it. Is it their fault?
Not 100%.
How so? Didn't they do this? Did he do anything? Is it any percent his fault?
He can still make he can make choices. So a little bit.
At 5, 6, and 7?
No, I thought you meant 13 or 14.
No, that's the manifestation of it. This happened when he was 4, 5, 6, 7.
So I would say it's the parents' fault.
But their responsibility going forward.
Fault means what?
Responsibility.
Nope.
No.
You did something wrong that you're aware of?
Ah, yeah. Okay, let's look at that, okay? Fault denotes blame. if you blame somebody for something and say they're at fault for it, what are you inferring?
Culpability.
They were aware of what they did. They purposely did it with the intent of causing what they caused, right? How does that make you feel? If I stole your personal item that your dying mother gave you and I stole it, your necklace, how would you feel?
Buries.
You'd be disgusted, you'd be angry, you would want what?
Revenge.
Yeah, you would want revenge, vengeance. Yeah, right? Because you want to be made whole. This person purposely did this to me and took my stuff, and now because of that I feel pain and suffering. I want that person to have pain and suffering, right? And then some, because I want what I want to make up for that. If you carry that vengeance, is that a good feeling to carry around? No, because you need hate to do that, right? And you need resentment, and you need lots of energy to harness that and to carry that. Does it take a lot of energy to carry around a bunch of hate and vengeance and resentment? Woo! I mean, it takes a lot. And when you're sucking all the energy into carrying that thing, what are you not putting energy into? Yeah, fixing and healing, or even growing, or even functioning. That takes a lot of energy, and we're limited in the amount of energy we have. So imagine carrying that anger and frustration against somebody who's more powerful than you currently, and not being able to do anything. Oof. Is that going to lead to what we call self-destructive behavior? What's self-destructive behaviors? Now remember, not only are you feeling awkward, low self-esteem, and hurt from abandonment and all that other stuff, but now you're filled with rage and anger and vengeance for the things that that person did to you that you blame them for. Ooh. So how are you going to cope and deal with that? Most likely you're going to find that you're going to look for escapisms, an outlet to not feel that pain and that hurt and that dysfunction. You don't want to feel that way. When you drink, how do you feel?
Better.
I feel relaxed. It lets it go. Yeah, you can wait and let it go. I'm okay with that, and so on. But that only lasts for a little bit. Then what happens? Yeah, then you're back, and now you're hungover. You don't feel good, and that makes it kind of worse a little bit, right? And then you're like, oh man. So you're going to start using that as a tool then every time you get worked up or frustrated. Now, carrying all that hate and anger and resentment, is that going to make it more difficult for you to cope and deal with normal stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, because now you're going to be hypersensitive to anything anybody does. Someone could just come up and say, hey man, you okay? Hey, can you get that? What? And you're going to snap off on them. Why?
Now you need a drink after you.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, I feel bad. Right. So now I need to medicate myself to be functional, or to be around people, or to do that. Does that make sense? Or to boost my self-esteem? There's many reasons to do it. Do you see where those patterns of dysfunction come into play? And it doesn't have to even be drinking alcohol or something. Maybe it's sex. Maybe it's, what's that? Food. Maybe it is, there's all kinds of behavioral stuff that people pour themselves into, to escapisms, social media, gaming, work, shopping. I can go on and get cigarettes, anytime, energy drinks, food, all of that stuff people use as a means to deal with carrying all that. That's going to lead to lots of aberrant behavior. That's going to lead to poor relationships. That's going to lead to depression, anxiety, sleep problems. All of those things that we mentioned at the beginning of this lecture. So is it healthy to use those things? Does it solve anything in the long run? No, drinking alcohol and doing drugs doesn't solve anything in the long run. Temporarily, it does make me feel better. I give it that. The problem is it's going to end up causing more problems than what you originally started with. That's why I have a problem with it. I just want you to know why you're doing it. Only people that are unhappy in life abuse drugs and alcohol. Otherwise, you would never do it. So using the coping mechanisms of escapism is what most people commonly do. They do that because they're lacking the resolve part, right? Because wouldn't you want to resolve the problem? That would fix it. So why don't we resolve it? The answer is because you don't know how. If you did, wouldn't you do that? Well, let me have 20 years of misery, or I could just resolve it. Well, you're going to take the resolve. Why would you do 20 years of self-destructive behavior if you knew the answer? The problem is you don't know the answer. Where are you supposed to get the answer from? The people that caused the problem. That's the problem. The people that gave you this, and this comes back to it. Are these people to blame, your parents? Blame means that you purposefully did something to cause this. Do you think your parents sat out and said, I'm going to see how I can screw up my kid's life and make my life miserable all at the same time? So I'm going to do all these things against my child so that they'll be dysfunctional and I'll be dysfunctional and it'll destroy the entire family.
No.
Do you really think a parent sets out and decides to do this?
No, they really just may not have known.
Yeah, and here's where the healing part of this comes. Because remember I said it's going to be in sections. So next week we'll cover the how do you heal part. Right now this is the starting point. You have to come to the realization that hurt people do what? Hurt people. Okay, that's universal. That's without exception. Okay? So if I know that, I have to look back and I have to take a look at my mom's history. That means you may have to go up to grandma and grandpa. Usually that's where you find the source. The original source is usually not your mom or your dad. Where do you learn how to parent from? Your mom and dad. So where did your mom learn to parent? From grandma and grandpa. Where did they learn how? Great grandma and grandpa. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can trace the ladder up and you can see where things fell off. So you would have to do a little family searching, a little genealogy, and kind of take a look. Where did this come from? Usually you're going to find alcoholism or drug abuse, because that leads to infidelity, which leads to breakups and the breakup of the family. Almost always, most of the things that I see are physical abuse or cheating or emotional abuse. And then that splits up the family and it's not because that person wants to do that, it's because that person doesn't have control of their faculties, and when they're drunk, they do stupid things. We all agree upon that, right? Do you make good decisions when you're drunk or high on drugs? Never. And that's going to lead to really poor decisions, impulsive decisions. Can that break up a family? If you're getting along wonderfully and you're raising the kids well, and then you decide you're going to go out and you start drinking, and it starts okay, and then eventually you start to drink too much, and then your spouse says, hey, listen, you should stop. And you say, oh, I'm fine, I'm a grown man, I'm working this and that. And then you end up progressing to the point where you drink, end up going out, spending a lot of money, going and finding someone else and cheating, and then getting caught. Ooh, you may regret it, and you may be very sorrowful for what you've done, but did you already do it? Can you come back from that? No, that's impossible. Now you just tore up your family. Now that's going to lead to consequences that could be generational. So now the split comes, right? And are breakups ever amicable? No, there's always resentment and anger and frustration. And if you have a kid, you think most of the people, oh, hey, your dad cheated on me. You think that the mom's going to be really nice talking about dad? Come on. Realistically, she's going ballistic on him. She's going to make him look out to be the devil himself, and vice versa. That kid has to hear all that stuff. At some point, he's going to realize he's a man, right? And if his dad is that way and he's that way, what is he going to be?
That way.
That way. And you're going to say, where did that come from? Well, you raised him. You raised him. You did that. Because you couldn't set aside your own petty selfishness and insecurity and lack of maturity and cognitive capacity to be able to raise your child despite being wronged. And you were wronged. Nobody's disputing that. How you went about dealing with it is what people have a problem with. Because now you've just destroyed your child's life as a result of your anger and bitter resentment, your vengeance.
The Psychology of Life. Psychology of Life. Health and Wellness Show. Health and Wellness Show. With behavioral expert Dr. Scott Anderson.